Not everyone is motivated by the same thing, and not everyone receives communication and communicates in the same way. To make a really successful product, actually, you really need creativity and you need diversity. We're all diverse, right? Because the world would be very boring if we're all the same.
Welcome, and today we're going to be talking about diversity and creating an inclusive and a motivating workplace. And I'm here today with Dr. Sarah Marble. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell me how you built up your expertise in this topic.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Alden. It's a pleasure to join you today on one of my favorite topics. I'm a business consultant and executive coach. I've worked in the life sciences industry for many, many years. And one of the things that I've really discovered through that journey in product development and manufacturing of various medical products is to make a really successful product, actually, you really need creativity and you need diversity in those teams. And that's not just the teams that are building the product, but also the teams that are supporting. So it's a wider organizational thing that we need to think about. But that's applicable to all types of industries too.
We have a topic of building a highly motivated workforce. So I think one of the key questions is, are we all motivated by the same thing?
And the answer is absolutely not. And that shouldn't be a surprise, right? A lot of people think, oh, it's got to be the job title or it's going to be the salary. Whereas actually, as we know, a job title is not everything. And it is also about what's the job description? How are you going to be interacting with people? What's the job looking like? Are you going to be very independent? And that's because different people are motivated by different things. So especially when you're trying to bring in top talents, you need to be thinking about that and thinking, what's the sort of candidate that I want to bring in? Do I need somebody who is very motivated by working in a team because it's a role that requires lots of teamwork? Or do I need somebody who is really excellent at being sharp-eyed and looking at the detail and being able to spend hours and hours on very intricate information in order to, analyze details, and where a role where in a team is not as important because actually it's individual work. So that's why understanding different people's different motivations is super important, because then you're making sure that they're the right fit. I don't like to use the word fit, actually. Actually, we use the word fit, but there's the right the right link between the role and the candidate that's going to get the role. I get asked so many times, "Oh, I've worked in big corporates. Do you think I could fit? Will it work for me to be in a startup environment?" And actually, they are two completely different environments, and you can thrive in both. But you might have a strong preference to one particular type of environment where there's lots of risk, there's lots of stuff to do. You need to roll your sleeves up and do lots of things yourself because you're a small company. Or you might thrive better in a more structured environment, such as a big corporate, where you have lots and lots of support, lots of different departments there with their expertise to support you, so you do your best job in your specific role. So lots of people just ask me that very question, could I go into this other environment? And I really have to say, well, these are the sort of attributes of the environment. How do you feel about that? So from experience, having worked in startups, I would say that you are looking for individuals who are very happy to work in an environment where lots of things are happening and they might be wearing different hats throughout the week, because you don't have the resources for people doing a specific role. So you want people to feel comfortable being in and out of their core role and evolve with the role, because it will change, because a startup is growing, hopefully, or is evolving, is pivoting, etc. So you want people who feel comfortable and are motivated by that opportunity for them to learn a lot on the job, also still feel very supported by the organization. So it's not about sink or swim, but it is about opportunities for you to explore things and also volunteer and say, oh, I quite fancy a bit of that. Could I have a go? or being able to say, hey, I can help you with this. I used to do it in this company in a different way. What about that? So it's that flexibility and being comfortable being in that environment, which isn't for everybody. So that's really important for people to find out when they're going for interviews in startups, really.
I always think that one of the nicest things about working in a startup, particularly in a senior role, is you have this freedom to kind of create processes and run them the way that you think they should be run. But then
Yeah,
the flip side of that is there is no process that everybody else assumes is definitely what's going to happen. And so you're going to have to fight for every step of it in whatever you want to introduce. And so that's not a puzzle that everybody's naturally fitted for, right?
absolutely. And also, it has to be said, I've written a lot of quality management systems in my time now. And I'm very mindful that if I were to apply for a role in a very early startup, it might mean start from scratch a quality management system. Is that something that I'm prepared to do while I've already done it before? So some individuals say, yeah, I can do it, my eyes closed, no problem at all. But there might be individuals who go, I've seen one too many SOPs in my time now. I don't feel like doing it again. That's not really for me. But what I can do is look at the strategy piece of implementing a quality system. But then I'm going to work with someone else, maybe even a consultant or a contractor, to do the delivery. And there's different options available. It really depends on how the startup wants to do it. But being mindful of that and setting expectations for the role is super important.
We've been talking about diversity, but we've been talking about diversity in the sense of your background and the way that it shapes your instincts, your aptitudes, and even what you enjoy doing in a job. But diversity includes more than that, and you need to think about more than that as an employer. So, how early in the journey should the employer start thinking about supporting and nurturing a diverse workforce?
Day zero, as in the minute that you have a co-founder, effectively, you want to be making sure that it's part of your fabric. It's not something that you add on top of it, thinking, oh, we must think about this, just the same as sustainability. And I think there's some things that, are very similar. Oh, it's not someone's department. Actually, it's everybody wants to think about sustainability, and it's everyone's um, fabric in every department. They should be thinking, how do we make sure that the practices, the culture, the ways of working are supporting sustainability and diversity and inclusion. And that can be really straightforward. So from day zero, it doesn't need to cost a lot of money to think about that. A classic example that I often share with people that I mentor at the Judge Business School. How do you make sure that you're attracting top talent and diverse top talent at the job description? And you're thinking, well, how do I do that? Well, it's through the language. So we know obviously that certain keywords and certain words are more masculine or more feminine or are encouraging people to think, oh, that sounds like me. Yes, I can see myself in the role. But if you really want to do it properly, then you can simply put that into a particular tool that is available online. So it doesn't cost you anything, it's free. And it's a gender decoder. And it puts the job description through and then tells you, is it a balanced set of wordings that you've been using? And therefore, even if you're not an HR professional, you're able to say, yes, this is a job description which is well balanced and will attract, everybody who reads this and thinks, yes, that sounds like me.
It's about having that openness to other people's values, other people's assumptions, not just in recruitment, but throughout every touch point with the rest of a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And different times of the day. Some people are buzzing when they come in the morning and they want to hit the ground running and do their best work. And some people go, please give me a cup of coffee. I just want to just gently warm up into the day. So yeah, being mindful of that is really good. And there's simple things that, if you're in facilities, you can think about, how are you making the environment supportive of neurodiverse individuals who might not appreciate if everybody is always crammed into one tiny room with lots of light and with lots of noise. So what can you do to create different spaces so that people feel, yeah, that's the right space for me to do the best work? And that doesn't cost a lot of money if it just means actually this is a quiet zone. Okay, so we're all mindful that in that zone we talk a little bit quieter, and that's okay. And it becomes the culture and the practices of the organization very quickly.
How do you build that inclusive culture? Who do you put in charge of diversity initiatives?
Everybody. So that's why having a leadership team that is committed to that and has that at the forefront of their mind in the activities and the areas that they're responsible for. So whether you're the CEO and you're about to share company updates and think about what's the best day, what's the best time for doing these company updates, to somebody in facilities who needs to think about the reception and the items that need to be in, to dedicated managers who say, you know what, this individual is going to call online because actually they're not really comfortable. Well, they know they're not really comfortable being in a massive room with lots of other people squished in chairs. And that's okay. So, you know what? Can the IT team make sure that there's also a dedicated online platform so that the individual who doesn't feel comfortable can still join in and ask questions in the chat? These are just a couple of examples that just show the different areas of the business that are thinking about that in their day-to-day processes because they're all responsible for it. I always advocate, and when I used to lead my teams, I'd say, how did I do? What can I do differently? And that their appraisal, I always made time at the end to say, and what can I do differently to be a better manager to you? Or how can I support you differently? What can I start and continue for next year to help you more?
If you move from having a dedicated diversity individual to everybody owning it, that's the thing that really drives for cultural change.
Absolutely.
So, what about handling diverse people within your workforce and finding the right way to motivate them and particularly to provide feedback? Because that can often be a conflict point. How do you roll out this inclusive culture inside your organization?
So I'll just say we're all diverse, right? Because the world would be very boring if we're all the same. So by nature, humans are different, and therefore we're all diverse to some extent, right? So I think it's down to, I think your question about communication and giving feedback. It's fine. It's knowing the people and knowing how to communicate best. And not everyone is motivated by the same thing, and not everyone receives communication and communicates in the same way. So understanding what people's preferences are, especially on an individual level, is incredibly important. So, for example, if it's somebody who you know is really a detailed person, really focused, they need to have lots of information in order to understand the situation or a problem. Then emailing them a short email with a couple of bullet points is probably not going to go the right way. And we can instinctively go, yeah, that's not how we do it. But then finding out when's the best time to actually have that one-to-one conversation. Do they need actually to know about it and prepare for it? Or are they people who would then feel more anxious about knowing that there's an upcoming meeting? All these subtle things you need to think about in order to deliver your message. It's much harder when you're doing it at scale. And there you have to be mindful to communicate in different ways and provide different types of information in different slices. But when it's particularly on an individual case, then paying attention to how the person communicates will tell you how they would like to be communicated to, even down to the words, I hear you, Sarah, or I see what you mean, or I understand what you mean. These are ways that you can gauge whether I'm somebody who's more visual, auditory. All these things really matter.
ties back into the thing that you were saying earlier about how it shouldn't be an individual driving this behavior, but baked in across the organization. The more the leadership team acts in this way, the more they're saying, this is how I would like you to act to the next layer of management, who then act similarly to the next layer of management. And so the culture spreads.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we shouldn't be afraid of discussing and calling out on people when we think, you know what, that behavior is not acceptable or how you speak is not cool. Because if you leave it, even if it's a small thing, you know, if in the pit of your stomach you think, oh, that's not how our culture should be, and you let it go, then what you're sending is another signal that you're accepting that behavior. So actually, little and often, and a bit of feedback going, can I have a quick word? You know what I just observed? Well, it didn't feel right to me because da 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 da. Or I'm sure you didn't mean it how it came out, but how I heard it or how I received it or how I viewed the situation didn't make me feel great. Can we have a chat?
Thing that I really love about businesses that have this kind of approach to the culture is, for me, it shouts respect. It says, I've seen you, I understand who you are, and I value that person, and I'm making a little space for you to be you. And I find that so motivating.
Absolutely. Me too. Absolutely. What I would say is for people to be comfortable saying, you know what, the way that I work best is in this environment. You need to already be in an environment where you feel what we call psychologically safe, because otherwise people will feel a little bit hesitant or think, oh, is it going to backfire if I actually say this is how I would prefer to work, or what the clothes I would prefer to wear, or you know, the time of day that I would like to leave at the end of the day. I really do need to, you know, have a hard stop at 5 o'clock for collecting my children. All these things, you have to have people who feel that that's okay to be asking and saying, this is me and this is what I need. And that's up to the leadership team, first of all, to lead by example and create that environment, but also everybody in the organization to be respectful and ask questions. Don't assume that people all want the same thing as you. I remember quite a few years ago, somebody came up to me and said, you know what? It's lovely. We celebrate company successes and there's this Prosecco, but actually, I don't drink alcohol. And I just don't feel that, you know, you giving me a glass of orange juice or water is feeling as festive. It feels like I'm always, you know, a bit secondhand. And I said, you're right. There's actually really good ways of actually, you know, celebrating. So we called it bubbles. And actually, it doesn't matter if there's alcohol or not. There would be two sets, same refined glass, same moment of festivity, and no one feels like, oh, I got the cheap orange juice and you all, you know, 90% of people are drinking the prosecco. It's someone who mentioned it to me and I thought, thanks, yeah, good point.
Because otherwise, you're sending the message that the people who are having the orange juice weren't part of that success. And that's the opposite of motivating.
Exactly. And for somebody who just thinks, oh, it's just a drink, I probably wouldn't have thought, oh, does it really matter? We're just celebrating. But actually, it was, you know, giving a signal to somebody to say, you know what, not as inclusive as it could be.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been absolutely fascinating. And I think some really important tips there for any startup that wants to inspire and motivate the workforce across the organization.
It's my pleasure, Alden. My pleasure.
Thank you very much.